In this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board Podcast, we are going down under. We are going to Australia because we are going to talk about some of the prospects in Australia's NBL Next Stars program. I want to ask Richard, is this the best alternative pipeline to the NBA? Stay tuned. Big shout out to each and every person that has made the Locked On NBA Big Board Podcast your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Rafael Barlowe, along with my co-host, Richard Stayman. It's been a minute since we've done a podcast together, but I want to let you know that this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. This season, you can get a big return on FanDuel. All you have to do is place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. So visit fanduel.com to get started. And if you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, please subscribe, like, share, comment. Make sure that you click the bell so you can be notified every time we post, because we are in season, which means you're going to get the Locked On NBA Big Board Podcast 5 days per week. And when we're in season, and no basketball season hasn't officially started in the States, I know the NBA teams, I guess a couple have had their media days, but they're in action in different parts of the world, which means we can talk about real games now instead of just talking about like prospects and what we think they're going to do and limit it to FIBA play. We can talk about real professional games. And that's why Richard is here. We're going to talk about the NBL program in Australia. First of all, Richard, how's everything going your way? I know you've moved to a new part of the world. You're no longer part of the Dallas crew. You're now DC Richard.
DC Richard. I like that. No, it's funny. You said we're going down under to Australia. You got me thinking about a trip down there. Although we were talking about this before, I'm petrified of the bugs and all that. I don't know how I'd actually fare, especially as we're approaching winter here, so summer there. But it's funny. I've never been super deep diving into the NBL and everything. But this year, I think I'm just so, there's a lot of content that isn't starting for another month and a half. So I'm really excited to start the process early and actually be able to study the games very far out so that when the season really hits its wheelhouse, I can compare my notes to say, hey, this is what I saw in September at the very beginning of the season. How did they progress? And I think that kind of stuff is really fun with the NBL and any overseas league.
Well, if you don't like bugs, you don't want to go to Africa. Honest truth. I was in Senegal earlier this month, 57 mosquito bites.
That's terrible. I'm more scared of like that. Mosquitoes suck, and that sounds awful. But I'm scared of like the big things, like those. There's like some crazy spiders they got. Like they have tarantulas, I'm sure, down there. Like all of that stuff just freaks me out. Like things you would not see in a house in like the States. That is the kind of stuff. Even roaches petrify me, and you can see that here. But like, I feel like they're just on steroids everywhere else.
Yeah, now Africa, especially considering that you have to take like malaria pills before you go. And every time you get a bite, I mean, for me, I'm like, I'll be fine. But, my wife is like making me take all these COVID tests and scared to touch me when I get back because she thinks I may have malaria or something like that. But no, 57 mosquito bites. I was on the plane looking crazy, just trying not to scratch. And nobody else got bit. I went with a couple other people. And they were African. And so I don't know if the bugs just knew that I was a newcomer and they lit me up. I mean, lit me up bad. It was so bad. And I'm going off topic here. I was playing basketball with James. And then I had like a cramp in my calf. Like I literally like had a cramp when I had to stop playing. And then while this guy was like stretching my calf out, James is like, dude, where you been? I was like, I was in Africa. I mean, I had that many mosquito bites on my leg that it was obvious. But no, I mean, they were biting me through my shirt. I mean, it was bad. Anyway, Australia NBL Next Stars program. In your opinion, is this the best alternative program to the NBA?
Yeah, and the NCAA is obviously always going to be the primary. I think for the NBA, especially. Just naturally with geography, right? NBA, essentially, if you think about it, they get their talent from states, which is NCAA. There's really no other North American prep program anymore now that the G League Ignite is gone. Their competition was pretty much NCAA and NBL, and now it's NCAA and NBL, and that kind of leaves them there. Europe doesn't have a solidified, same thing as the Next Stars or the NCAA devoted more for young players and have like that special carve out. So therefore, yeah, just by default, I think the NBL's there. I'm interested though to see if we do get something in Europe, because if some guys, look at the rosters and who plays. The guys on Ulm, Noah Asenje and Ben Saraf, both of those, they play. Yeah. Not many other guys this year in the international class even play over 20 minutes, including the guys in the NBL.
Yeah, Hugo Gonzalez got a DNP, and so that's going to be very interesting. All right, let's talk about some of the players in the NBL program, which it's, to me, like, the biggest success story has been LaMelo Ball. I think Terrence Ferguson was the first, if I'm not mistaken, to go from the Next Stars to get drafted. Then you have RJ Hampton. So two of those guys were from the Dallas area. LaMelo has been a success. And then you ended up with Alex Sarr last year. Josh Giddey. I think Josh Giddey is a successful player. There's the whole cloud surrounding his name, but he's still very young. And I'm still a Josh Giddey believer. But then you had, like last year, you had Alex Sarr went number 2. You've had Ryan Rupert. You've had some success stories, Ousmane Dieng. But this year, I feel like even though there's not like a guy that I think is going to be a top 5 pick, I do feel like there's a lot more attention on it this year. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on a few players. Let's talk about Alex Toohey. He committed to Gonzaga. Or is it Gonzaga? I guess it depends on who you're talking to.
Nevada. Like same thing.
Yeah, potato. But yeah, he's a guy that, some people in the States are familiar with because he did commit to school. And he's from like that center of excellence. Have you had a chance to like watch?
I haven't, I don't think.
It's like everybody, it seems, comes from that center of excellence. So I got my Big Boy Global Scouting service. And when I do my scouting reports on like the Australian prospects, a lot of them come from this center of excellence. And I guess it's like their academy, which is like their pipeline that just pumps out guys. And Toohey was there. But I just want to hear your thoughts on Alex Toohey as an NBA prospect.
Yeah. So with Toohey, I think the stats didn't pop too much with him, especially in the shooting department. Like, his shot kind of looks weird in a way. Let me pull up his stats actually to just run through them. He shot last year. This is pretty small volume. Or no, sorry, that was this year. Yeah, last year he shot 25% from 3, 68.5% from the line. Nothing that impressive. That's really all there is on the international side. That's readily available. And, I think I believe in the shot enough given his size. He's like, 6'7", 6'8", somewhere in that window, 6'6" to 6'8". I've seen him listed. And the upper body stuff looks good. I think he's not that fluid on the lower body. I want to see that base get consistent. I think if he's a good shooter, he's got a really good chance at the NBA. But what he needs to improve on is pretty much everything else. He's not very strong. I think he's pretty passive on both ends of the floor. He didn't really try and assert himself into plays, especially on the defensive end. He was content. If his man was in the corner, he was staying in the corner. He wasn't leaving that to help dig, anything like that on anybody coming down and driving towards the rim. And also just on ball, I felt like he got bullied pretty hard. He wasn't that great in stance, kind of made weird decisions. He was halfway committed to a pick and pop and then just left the scene pretty much, leaving his teammate really confused and yelling at him right after. So I think there's a lot there, but the best thing for him is to become a good shooter, and that's going to be his ticket in.
Yeah, he's a guy that is kind of weird to me. I think you see flashes of what he can be or what he can do. But right now, my question is, and this is a question for you, what is the skill set that he could hang his hat on right now in the NBA?
It'd be just like the shooting. He has to get there. And right now, it's very far away. I think if he was drafted this year, I think he stays overseas the same way like Luke Travers did. And now he's coming over this year. I think he would not be a come over right away. He's definitely a stash pick, no matter what happens this year. Even if he completely breaks out, I think he just has so much work to do away from the ball and away from shooting that I think that's stuff that is going to come with time.
Do you think it's still very, very early, but do you think he's a top 60 guy? Do you think he's draftable?
At the moment, I mean, it's tough because, right, all these guys are ahead of him that haven't played.
Yeah.
Like, he's almost at a disadvantage because now his flaws are more exposed this year. But I think at the moment, no. I would say he can get there depending on who flops and who rises in the NCAA, because that's a majority of the talent pool. But I think he's on the outside looking in.
Yeah, it's definitely going to happen. I've had this conversation with my brother. Like right now, freshmen are, everybody likes the freshmen, but it's impossible for all these guys that are on all these draft boards right now to live up to the hype. Some of them are at schools where they're not going to have a clear-cut path to playing time, even though they may be the better long-term prospect. They're just behind seniors and so on. So I do think a good percentage of the freshmen are going to fall off. And like last year, when I did my big board 1.0, I think I had 20 freshmen. No, I'm sorry. I had 14 freshmen getting drafted in my big board 1.0.
Damn.
And I think only 7 got drafted. 7 returned to school for their sophomore year. And outside of like Marco Jackson, who's out for the year,
Yep.
and Elliot Cadeau. Those are the only 2 that stayed at their school. Everybody else that I had as like, from DJ Wagner to Aaron Bradshaw to Ivisic to, all those guys ended up transferring. So with that being said, I do think that quite a few of the freshmen in this class are going to have to come back for their sophomore year, which is not a bad thing. All right, when we return, have a few more prospects to ask Richard about. One of them is a guy that I actually like his game. I don't know how it translates, but he's super productive. Lachlan Olbrich. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly, but he's like this guy that is fun to watch, but he's not like exciting, if that makes sense. He's not like jumping out the gym. He's just productive. But before we get into that, we have to talk about FanDuel. Why? Because FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. And if you are an NFL fan, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, which is America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can actually go and check out the stats. You can view the live play-by-play and so much more on the same page where you placed your bets. So you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. And all you have to do is place your first $5 bet. Check it out. FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Once again, thank you for making the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast your first listen of the day. Now, for your second listen, check out the Locked On NBA podcast. Why? Because there's no offseason in the NBA. And Locked On NBA provides daily basketball analysis from the national and local experts, and you get it in 30 minutes or less. And no one keeps you as informed or as entertained as Locked On NBA. It is available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts as part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every single day. All right, Lachlan Olbrich, a guy that I first watched last year. He played college ball in the States for a season. I know he was like player of the year in this conference. He was fun to watch. He's like this guy that's like skilled. He's like a skilled bruiser. He's just a mismatch problem. From the film that I watched, he's not like this great shooter. He's not like an elite athlete, not like a crazy ball handler, but it's just a combination of post game, being at the right place, right time. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I didn't know he played college ball first. UC Riverside. I was looking it up. He was a Big West Rookie of the Year just 2 seasons ago. I had no clue about that. He averaged like 11 and 6. I don't know if his game, just watching him from what I've seen now, because I'm going to have to go back and look at this now. But in the NBL, I saw him last year and I saw him this year. I've seen him in the one about to watch his second game after we finish recording. But I can tell you his game very clearly translates much better to a pro style, especially like Australia right now. Like you said, he's in the post a lot. And yeah, that works in college some amount. But I think with the tempo, it helps him so much more where he's able to pass out of the post so much more easily into a better spaced team. I feel like I really like his game translating up if he can kind of inch away from the post and show more resemblance of a jump shot, because he has soft touch near the rim. It reminds me almost the way Philip Petrusev had it, where like he couldn't really shoot, but man, like everything near the rim was so soft. Is he going to be that same way where he's not going to be able to shoot, or is he going to break the mold and actually shoot? But I feel like his ball skills are nice. He sees the floor really well in transition. Like he's made some really good passes this year with 2-on-1 advantages. If he's got someone near him, he makes the right read. He doesn't make sloppy turnovers. Like I just like a lot of his game and think he's somebody who definitely has a path. Again, he has to change his game some, but he could definitely make the NBA.
I like him. Last year at the NBL Blitz, he went like 19 of 22 from the floor. To me, he was like the best player at the Blitz. I'm looking at 18.6 rebounds, 5 assists on 19 of 22 shooting. And like I said, I thought arguably he was the best player at the Blitz, 6'10", but he just does so many things well. He runs the floor. He's an instinctive cutter. He's got a good nose for the basketball. He does the blue collar work, can handle a little bit in space. I mean, he just finds a way to get it done. But do you think guys that just find a way to get it done that don't necessarily like stretch the floor consistently have a role in the NBA, especially if they're not going to be featured on the block?
Yeah. I mean, look at Drew Timme. Like, I don't know if he'll ever make the NBA. Like if he'll play like, a meaningful role in the NBA. And I think the big thing for him is last year, I didn't like his defense very much. I felt he was he was more undersized than his actual size suggested. I think he's like 6'10", but he played like he was 6'8", and that is a massive difference. I know it's just 2 inches, but he played more like a forward and not a big. He's got to choose one. If he's going to be near the rim, he needs to get stronger and play like a 6'10" guy. If he wants to step out and maybe expand that range, he's got to go and add those ball skills and add those shooting skills, those like big wing that can post you up kind of stuff. That's what he's got to add.
Yeah, like I said, he's skilled. Like I saw possessions where he got the rebound and pushed the ball up the floor, just scores in a variety of ways, whether it's like low post, roll man, cutter. He makes floaters, bully ball. He's skilled. He's a player that he's one of those interesting guys that I could see like coming over in summer league and playing extremely well in summer league, but still doesn't get like a guaranteed contract. And he's kind of like on the fence.
Yeah.
But I like him.
He's going to get a two-way. And like, for me, I think a two-way is all he needs, because at that point, if he produces, okay, let the team make the decision. Like he's doing what he can. I think he is somebody that absolutely could get a two-way. It's deserving of it. And I could very well see graduating from the two-way.
But even then, I think, does it make sense to go on a two-way? Like,
if you're making it depends. If he wants to come back to the States, yes. If he's comfortable doing what he's doing and making probably more money and also getting more minutes in meaningful basketball, stay in Australia. Like, I think that's the beauty of basketball being global, is not everybody has to come stateside to play, their best version of themselves.
Yeah. I think if I were like his agent, I don't think I would come over for a two-way, just because a two-way is not guaranteed. You can get cut at any time. At least if it were a guaranteed deal, you get, guaranteed money. Then if you get cut, you still got more money. So I don't know. To me, it would be tough, but I like him. I like him a lot. All right. When we return for the last segment, we have 2 prospects that I believe are surefire NBA players down the line that we're going to talk about. But before we get into the second segment, let's talk about Prize Picks. Why? Because Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy app. They have over 5 million. You heard me right. 5 million active users. That's crazy. I remember when we used to talk about it and they didn't have 5 million, but they have over 5 million active users, and it is the easiest and the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you can watch the winnings roll in. PrizePicks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineups stay in play, even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return in the second, your PrizePicks picks are still alive. So If you like daily fantasy sports, you will love Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA, and you can get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNBA on Prize Picks, and you can get $50 instantly when all you play is $5. You don't even have to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks.com. All right, last segment. Rocco Zikarsky, very interesting prospect, skilled, 7'2". I've seen him in the lottery on different big boards. I think that, he's deserving of that range. What is your overall thoughts on Zikarsky?
Yeah, I have a mixed bag of thoughts on him. So one, let's just start with the positives. His feel for the game is insane. I think he's one of the better drop coverage, or really just entirely paint protecting bigs I've scouted in some time, where it's just truly incredibly mistake-free basketball. He knows what to do. He uses his length very well. I think he's extremely instinctive. My big drawbacks are, in addition to really not having much away from dunking as scoring the basketball, I think his big drawback is this podcast is longer than the longest amount of minutes he has played in over a year. He hasn't played 15 plus minutes since last September, and it was early September. So it's been a very long time, and he has to prove that he can get on the court. He played 6 minutes in his first game. It wasn't that bad of minutes, but he has to prove he can play 20 minutes or something, because right now it's just not enough.
But here's why he's such an interesting prospect to scout. So when you watch him in the NBL, it's like his flaws are more obvious. Like, he gets pushed around a little bit. He does show flashes, but then I watched him, and it's like the Albert Schweitzer tournament. He looked dominant. Like, when he's playing with his age group and he has freedom, you can really see like how good he is. In that tournament, he averaged 18, 11, 3 blocks per game, and shot 73% from the floor. So when I did my scouting reports on him, I did one just watching the limited minutes he played in the NBL. And the way I do my scouting reports is kind of like bullet notes, right? Didn't have a lot of bullet notes. But then when I watched him with his own age group, it was just full, because you saw how he could run the floor. I mean, you just saw like his whole skill set and what he does. And I that's why it can be a little difficult sometimes when you're evaluating guys playing in a professional setting like this, because the most glaring thing is going to show, oh yeah, he needs to get stronger. He's weak. He's getting pushed out the paint. But it's tough, because like I said, when I watched him play with his age group, he's just dominant. Like, you saw how fluid and athletic he is. He's young. So when he knows he's getting the ball, you're seeing him sprint the floor more.
Yep.
So you're seeing like a different level of athleticism for him when he knows he's being featured. When he's playing the NBL, it's like, I know I'm only going to get a few more minutes. He's trying to play hard, but it's not enough time for him to actually get a rhythm where you can see like what he can do. So he's a difficult. He's like kind of like Hugo Gonzalez for me, in a sense that when you watch them with their peers, you see the NBA potential. When you watch them in those little flashes, you don't get everything that they can do. But my biggest concern was the turnovers. Last year in the NBL, he had 4 assists and 17 turnovers.
Yep.
And at the Albert Schweitzer tournament, but he had 0 assists and 13 turnovers.
I mean, I feel like everything you just said relates back to strength, right? I haven't seen him truly win a box out against someone his own size yet. Even, I forget who it was in the first game. They played Karim Lopez's team, and there was a guard that killed him on a box out. Like, he was 6'2", maybe 6'2" at most. Mm-hmm. And Rocco couldn't move him. And that's the kind of stuff where I think whatever you think about handoffs as assists, like, it may not be the best, they're a little bit of inflating your number, but like, to not get one of those is pretty ridiculous. And again, assists are 2-part stats, like, fine, it's a 2-person stat. But if you're not able to run a DHO as a big, that's a huge takeaway for your game when you have no scoring package. If you're not stretching the floor, you have to be able to set a hard screen while handing that ball off. Like, that is a must. And he doesn't have that. And also, like, I mean, just to touch on again, like his scoring is really rough. I've seen him airball multiple push shots. Like he doesn't have touch required to really thrive. Like I think there's a lot of concerns there. Again, just anything away from dunking. But to finish it off with a positive, like you said, like he dominated his age range because his instincts and his feel for the game are so ridiculously advanced, given how long he is too. That's the kind of stuff that gets him on the radar.
So here's like the thing about him that makes him, again, a difficult evaluation for me. So I have a scouting report on him from 23, and then I have one from watching him at the tournament. And it's almost like I have two different, like, if you read it, you're like, are you talking about the same player? When I watched him in the NBL, I was like, may have slow feet, is passive. I mentioned that let me see what I have. I mentioned that he has good fundamentals. I didn't think he could defend in space. I thought he was lacking explosive, like quick twitch, vertical pop. And then I also, mentioned about like the rebounding, like he doesn't seal effectively in the post. He's easily pushed off balance. But I mentioned that I thought he showed glimpses of low post moves and footwork and solid passing instincts. But then I watched the next tournament and I'm just like, he can't pass. He makes bad decisions when he's faced double teams. But then I also was like, I started to notice he kind of struggles with his hands. Sometimes he bobbles passes. He does have a tendency to like bring the ball down low in traffic, which kind of puts him in position to get stripped by guards. But defensively, he was using his length. He was like obviously blocking shots. He was contesting like short range jumpers. He was effective in space. It was like two totally different players. And so I'm just curious to see like how to evaluate him throughout the season in the limited minutes that he's expected to have.
Yep. And like you said, those other contexts against his age, that might end up being the more important stuff. We see it a lot with American players where Peyton Watson, I mean, I don't think there's a better example than him. He's kind of the outlier of this. Is he was terrible in college. I mean, like there's no way to put it otherwise. He had the worst stats of anybody drafted, 3 points a game, 2 rebounds on 32% shooting. That doesn't happen. But you look at what he did against people his age of truly like in high school in the 18s, I think he was in, and like that kind of stuff.
He did okay on that. I mean, that team was
there,
loaded,
but like the high school,
Jaden Ivey.
Yeah, the high school stuff though was just so good. It got him a first round pick. And you have to wonder, like, is that going to be the same thing with Rocco Zikarsky, where they're like, okay, yeah, he's like, he needs to add muscle to his body. He can't hang with these guys. But we know he can dominate guys his own age. Like, which will end up being more important? We don't know.
And that's why the NBA is tough, because right now, a team in Australia or even like a guy playing overseas, the team doesn't care about you long-term in a sense. I mean, that's probably not the best way to word it. There's so much pressure to win right now that the coach is going to play who he believes can help him win right now. While an NBA team, if it's like a team like the Nets or the Wizards, they're going to say, hey, we think you can be something in 4 years. So we're going to give you playing time. We're going to be patient with you. It's an 82-game season. Somebody's going to get hurt. You're going to play. I mean, that's like the part that makes scouting difficult, but the part of it that makes it so fun is that you have to, go by what the player can be. Well, I think in Europe, it's like, what are you right now? In Australia, it's a competitive league. Alex Sarr didn't start, and he was the number 2 pick. So that's why it's going to be a little challenging to evaluate him.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, context is everything in the NBA.
All right, let's talk about Karim Lopez. Not eligible for the 25 draft, but he is, I think a lot of people believe he is the top ranked. I actually have him as the top ranked international prospect born in 2007. I don't know if it's set in stone. I mean, I think some guys could possibly pass him up, but he is very, very intriguing as an NBA prospect. He's from Mexico, played in Barcelona in Spain the last 2 years, and then has moved to Australia. So imagine you're like 17 years old, and he's already lived in Spain and Australia. And I definitely think from a maturity standpoint, he's going to be way, way ahead of his peers just because his life experiences are different. But were you impressed with what you've seen from Lopez?
Yeah, so I saw him over the summer I forget which tournament it was, but I watched him a lot over the summer, and I just remember thinking, like, who's this massive guy who has ball skills and the athleticism to get wherever he wants, whenever he wants against guys his own age? And then I looked him up and found out oh, he's a really popular player. Like, he's 6'8". He's going to be 18 for pretty much the entire, 17 for the entire NBL season. So come draft time, he's going to be a fresh 19 if he declares in 2026. So there is a lot to like with him. It's just that ball skills, the size. Look, in the NBL, I don't think he's going to get the ball much. You watch that first game where he played 10 minutes against Rocco's team, Brisbane. And dude, he was wide open, and you'd see the bigs look at him and go, and like just go to the next option. Like they don't want to pass to a teenager, which kind of goes to the same thing you said. Winning is priority. They don't care. These other guys don't care about development. Why should they? And he has to create everything on his own. He was passed to 2 times the entire game in 10 minutes. Every other time he touched the ball was off his own rebound. He crashed the boards really well. I think there were a few mistakes he made because he was playing sped up, but once the game slows down for him, we're looking at a guy with very high upside.
Yeah. Speaking of that, just like not getting the ball, not passing, like AJ Johnson. I mean, like 4 points a game. Well, it was a first round pick. And so it's like it's just tough, man, because those guys want to win. And then AJ needed the ball in his hands. And so I could see, and actually I've heard the story. The story that I've heard was the coach didn't trust him as like, a point guard or whatever. And I get it. He's trying to win. The coach probably doesn't care about the Next Stars program. That's just kind of like what he, is kind of forced on him. One story I heard, and I can't verify how true it is, that they fired the coach and they ended up hiring Jason Tatum's dad as the coach. And Jason's dad, Justin, is like, well, if I win some games, I'm going to get an extension. So I'm going to go with some veterans. And so it left AJ in a situation where he didn't get a lot of minutes, but whatever flashes he showed prior to that and at the combine and workouts, and really he was hurt most of the time, if I remember correctly. I don't even think he did a pro day. He was in the first round.
Right.
So you just never know. It's a case-by-case situation. But Lopez has 2 years. But my question is, it's only one game, so I don't want to overreact. But if that's a similar situation all season long, does he come back for year 2?
Yeah. And I was thinking that if he is back for second year 2, does that give him a longer leash? Is he going to be like Alex Toohey is playing 25 minutes a game, 20 to 25? Mm-hmm. Olbrich that we talked about earlier also, like, is he going to get the same thing? Who knows? And that's why I think one of the things I look for in international scouting because you're way ahead of this than not only me, but I think most people in the space at international scouting. You go to the games, you've been scouting these international guys forever, both when they were younger and then just guys like that waves. You've scouted all that, so you know what to look for. For me, I'm starting like just kind of fresh still within the last few years of it. And I think, like, obviously there's been exceptions, right? Like the top guys I see, but like top to bottom. But for me, it's you watch for that margin for error, right? These guys don't have a margin for error. They cannot afford to lose their man off the ball. You have to watch, like, that's one of the things for me with Karim Lopez is I watch, does he like just lose track of his man? Is he completely lost? Or is he staying attentive? Is he being too passive on the off the ball offensively? Like that kind of stuff is how you win that trust of the coach. Are you turning the ball over? What are you doing with the ball in your hands? And that extremely tiny sample size, it goes a very long way.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, like we said with AJ, coach didn't trust him, but the Milwaukee Bucks trusted him with a first-round pick. Lopez reminds me of, and I mean, it's an interesting comparison in a sense, but Lopez reminds me of Zachary Risache with a little bit more creativity off the bounce. And he's a couple years younger. And so if that's who he is, then that's going to be very, very, very appealing for NBA scouts. I think he's more so of a better stat sheet stuffer as far as being a defender, because when he's playing against his peers, he's like blocking 2 shots a game. He rebounds. I think he's got a little bit more toughness than Risache, but I like Lopez. I like him a lot. I get why he's so high on different draft boards for 2026. I mean, a 6'8" wing that can dribble, shoot, and pass, and he's only 17 years old. That's gonna, get a lot of attention.
Yeah, I'm telling you, if you get a chance to watch him, and like a lot of this stuff I know is on Synergy, it's hard to access, but like find his stuff on YouTube, watch for him in the next 6 months. You're going to hear that name a lot going forward, especially after Summer League for us. We start looking at the next class. Like he's somebody I think will be headlining. It's pretty easy to see us talking about him on and off for the next 18 months.
You know what? Like the reason I say I can't fully agree with that is because I don't know if he's going to get the opportunity. That's like the concern. Is he going to get the opportunity? So he played some with the Mexican national team and some of the qualifiers, but he's going to be intriguing because if he doesn't play a lot this year, I think there's going to be like big decisions on where can he go and play. And that's why I wonder if the college route could be something that he considers, if it's a possibility. I mean, right now, I don't even know what, like for college, what makes you ineligible as a pro or not, because you got the kid from Creighton that played like professionally for 4 years in the top league. And so who knows, but Lopez's situation is going to be one that I'm going to be monitoring and keeping track of, because I just don't know where he's going to get the playing time to like keep his draft stock high as the top player in the 2007 generation.
Yeah, and also, I mean, look how many guys are coming overseas for, one, just like think about the minutes that they get. Some of these international guys are getting more minutes in the NCAA than they would have overseas, and they get more of a spotlight with NBA teams. Why not?
But, and it's a whole other episode, all of the top draft picks from 2024 from Europe stayed. I had a conversation earlier today. We can wrap on this. I think there's only like 5 or 6 in the last 10 years, Europe to college first round picks. 2 of them are brothers in the Wagners.
Well, and that's tough too, because they haven't, like, it's new. But I agree, though, that is something that we should do an episode on. That'd be a fun conversation.
Yeah, because last year, Topic, Salon, Risache, Sar, all of those guys stayed. And then this year, Seraph, Asenge, Hugo Gonzalez. But that's a whole nother subject. We'll talk about that. You know what? Let's do that sometime next week. Well, thank you for making the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast your first listen of the day. I know we went a little over time, but it's always good talking basketball with Richard. But thank you for making this your first listen of the day. Now, for your second listen, go check out the Locked On NBA podcast, because you got the local experts that are keeping you updated on all the top storylines ahead of the season. You can find it on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Once again, it's Rafael Barlowe with Richard Stayman, and we are out of here.